Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat about mental health with amazing humans. For this episode, I'm so happy to welcome Sahara Rose Vore to the conversation. Welcome, Sahara.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Lovely to see you. So as I would always do, just a quick introduction, how we know each other, and then I'll let you do a proper introduction to who you are. So Sahara and I have known each other for a couple of years now, I guess. We're both part of the business travel wellbeing community. We've both got a passion and love for travel, but also the wellbeing elements of travel. It's so important as a part of who we are and how we work. So we're going to talk about that, no doubt, as we go through this conversation. A lot of the reason why Sahara does what she does is the love for travel, of course. So it's great. We met up last year for the first and only time at the business travel show, and we just got on really well. It was a lot of laughing, which was fantastic, and it seems to me whenever we talk we just fall about laughing about silly things. So it's lovely to see you, Sahara. I really do want to welcome you to this, and I'm looking forward to having a chat with you. So I'll let you do your introduction.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been, I'm so glad that I'm able to sit here and see you face to face virtually after finally getting to meet you over a year ago in London. So any piece of Matt that I can take, that I can have, I'm happy. So thank you so much for having me. Um, yeah, I'm a Sahara Rose Vore. I'm a wellness travel coach and consultant. I run a travel coaching network, and also I love just helping people optimize on travel experiences that actually boost their well-being, their mental health, and of course their work performance. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been back here since the beginning of 2020, and I finally get to spend more time with my adopted dog, Sophie. So that has been a plus for me as well. So I'm just really excited to share more of my story, and I hope that it inspires the listeners to, find something that they're not alone in feelings, and hopefully there's something that we can say that's funny to brighten your day too. So I'm excited.
Let's hope so. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So welcome again. So the big question, as we always ask in this, the frame of this is around your journey with mental health, and you define what that looks like. But tell us a story, Sahara. Tell us about you. Let's learn about who you really are and what you've been through and the experiences that have brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Just like many people, talking about mental health or talking about our own struggles hasn't always been easy. It's not, fun to talk about, especially when it comes to business. That's the face that we don't always put out there. We always put our accolades and our credentials and our successes, but we don't often share the behind the scenes. And parts that I've been forced to kind of look more into my past and really get a better understanding of myself and why I am the way I am, and acknowledge pieces of my own journey in life that I never really acknowledged. And the more that I think about it, when I was young, I'm an only child to a single mom, the most amazing mom, and I've been very fortunate to have someone so supportive of my entire journey in life. And everything that crazy I do and or go. But I've always been someone who struggled with anxiety. I remember from a really early age, I would always have this sense of anxiousness. I would always have a sense of like intrusive thoughts. And that's something that I learned more about recently. I never understood or put words to any of that. Obviously, as a child, well, in general, we don't always understand our mental well-being, our mental health, especially as a child. You don't understand why you think how you think, or why you feel how you feel, if there's no specific thing that triggers it or causes it. So I was always a good kid. I never wanted to ruffle feathers or make anyone feel bad, or have my mom feel bad. So I never always shared how I felt or what was going on through my head. But I just remember really thinking, some thoughts that were, not normal for little kids, like centered around like my grandma dying, even though she was not dying.
Right.
Like this just sense of anxiety that I didn't know where it came from. And I always found different ways for me to cope with it that I think became part of my personality,
Mm.
in the sense that I've always been a cleaner. I love to clean. And looking back on it, I think it's been a coping mechanism for me. It's a calming, it's very calming to me. But I remember as a child, like even just scraping like my carpet with a brush, and I wanted everything to be as clean and orderly. I mean, granted, it was nice for my mom to have a child that was very clean
I
and
know.
cleaned her
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
I think she wasn't going to be complaining. But these things, we don't often identify underlying reasons for why people do things. And I think
Mm.
I incorporate that into not only my work, but just as a human connecting with other humans. And I've gotten really interested in people's underlying reasons for why they do things or why they say things. And if I don't know, I'm curious. I wonder what their thought process behind that was. And I think a lot of that stems from me, like learning more about my behaviors and why I was doing things that I was doing. So that all carried over as I was getting older, and I struggled a lot in high school with bullying, and in school in general with bullying. And I had a hard time having friends. I am a very tall girl. I was a
Mm.
very thin girl, and I didn't always have the people who were the nicest to me around me. We changed neighborhoods or communities when my mom got married. So it was a whole different type of schooling and people in school. And I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in with everyone who had known each other since they were little. And so not only was I, when you're in your early teens or a preteen, you are going through a lot of changes. Your body's changing, your life is changing, everything changes. And then you're put in school, and that's a whole thing to deal with as well. So I was trying to figure out, how do I navigate my world with my own anxieties and stresses and thoughts that I never shared with other people. So I've always been really artistic. So I've turned to art and painting and drawing, and that has been part of my personality and my characteristics too. I was always the one that won awards for my art,
Wow.
or I was asked. Yeah, I remember my kindergarten really clearly, which is very strange, but I do. And it's one of like, I think it's because my kindergarten teacher made such an impact on me, because he was such a beautiful human
Right.
in so many ways. And I remember being the artist that would draw, that he would ask to draw murals in, or flashcards when we were learning vocabulary. And so I was always the artsy one. But what people didn't realize is that was a coping mechanism. So when I
Right.
look at my art, I see my life journey. And people always ask, and if anyone wants to see it and you find me on Facebook, I have a whole album with everything in there.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
look at the journey, I'm just like the rest of my personality. I am I'm a mixed medium. I like different things. I'm not the norm in anything. So my art reflects that, and I have so many different phases. So things you'll see in there that are my darker paintings, you'll see from my high school days. You'll see the pretty ones, which is the face that I want to please people, so they were either gifts or something from my mom's
Right.
wall. So it's I never really compared my life so much to my art, but it really was such a journey in that. And so what I did with my art and my cleaning rolled over eventually into my travels as I got older. So that's what led me into the travel world.
Wow, what an interesting story to start with there. And there's so many different elements to it as well. And if you don't mind, I would like to just touch on a couple of those points, if that's okay,
Yeah,
because the
absolutely.
listeners of this podcast, so there's parents out there, there's children out there potentially who might experience some of these challenges. Um, the impact of bullying, that's one that we see a lot in the mental health world in particular. What
Yeah.
happened? Did you ever get any support for that? Did you, I know you changed some things as well, but but can you define how that felt to you when that was happening?
You cut out for a second. Can you just
Oh,
repeat
sorry.
that?
Yeah. So it's when that bullying was going on, how were you
Mhm.
feeling inside? What was going on? Can you sort of reconnect to those thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I luckily during that time I did have a few friends who
Okay.
were always there for me, so I wasn't completely alone, and I know a lot of people do feel that way
Mm,
or that experience that. So in that sense, I was very grateful. It's just more of the unknown. It was more in my freshman days going into high school. So I'm a not only new community with a new type of people,
yeah.
but I'm in a new school and I'm the youngest of them all. So I would get bullied by the uh, juniors and the seniors, so two higher grades, and I had no idea who they were. They knew nothing about me, so I was so
Sure.
confused of why these people who didn't know who I was were so mean, and they would just corner me. I remember being cornered in like I was really, really thin and I was very tall. So I would just get cornered and told to eat. I would get stalked driving, walking home with my best friend. We get cars of people pulling up, just telling me like, "How's it feel to be anorexic?" Like all these things and things that I wasn't struggling with. So I was
Right.
not understanding like why they were, this was happening. Um, and it was difficult because a lot of it I wasn't sharing with my mom because my mom
Yeah.
is very protective of me, and I've told her stories as I gotten older, and so she's like, "Why didn't you tell me that?" I'm like, "'Cause your reaction now is exactly why I didn't tell
Yeah.
you
Of
that."
course. Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out how to deal with this. So of course it did impact me. I didn't want to go to school certain days, or I was trying to skip certain areas of the school. And I played basketball, I played softball. So being in the gym area, being in the locker room was part of my every day. And I was trying to avoid that. And it was the same thing when I was in my fourth grade, right before we changed communities, which is why we also changed. And I was also bullied in that grade too. And that was really tough with like I didn't grow up with we didn't grow up with much money. And my
Yeah.
mom, like I said, was a single mom. So she worked hard just to give me what we could get. And I remember these really popular sports jackets where everyone was getting in fourth grade. And I wanted one. And I was trying to describe to my mom what everyone had. So she was so kind. The next day I come home and I see a sports jacket on the bed. And it was like one of those pullover ones. I don't know.
Right.
It was like a short time that it was popular. And bless her heart, she got me a Mighty Ducks one, which is like a hockey and a movie one. It wasn't like
Right.
a football one that everyone else had. And I went to school still wearing it, and they ripped it up. And at school, and I felt so bad, and I didn't want to tell my mom any of these things were happening. So as a kid, you're just struggling to figure out like, how do you handle, obviously you have to be in school, you have to do well in school, but how do you navigate this world of these bullies? And I think being able to recognize as an adult and take action, and I think that's where a lot of that was missing for me, is that a lot of adults weren't speaking up or saying anything, or they didn't recognize it enough.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel empowered or encouraged to share it either.
No. Well, I'm glad that you're through, and yeah. What can I say? Shame
Yeah.
on those people, and I hope karma's come back to bite them all on the butt. Um,
Yeah, but I think about it now, I'm like, I cannot imagine how kids are in school. Bullying is so much worse, but yet it also goes home with them.
yeah.
Like we used to
Right.
be able to leave it in school, and now with social media, the internet, technology, devices, it's horrible. It's just
Yeah.
so bad. So yeah, I'm glad that we are at least touching a little bit on this, because that is something that I've been really passionate. I used to help run a anti-bullying organization for about 4 or 5 years here in my home state, and which was really nice, being able to go to schools and talking to kids and everything too. So that topic has always been really close to me.
Amazing.
But I just can't imagine what kids are dealing with now.
Well, well done you for sharing that, and for using, power for good in giving back to help support others, because it is, you're right, it's such a critical conversation right now, but it's been around for forever, hasn't it? And
Yeah.
one of the biggest challenges with mental illness and mental health challenges is bullying. That's something that we see a lot of, unfortunately. So let's evolve that. So you've done this work, but then you've got yourself into a place where you're going, right, now I'm going to go and do something else, or I'm going to get forward. So let's move forward that conversation to when that started. And where did that seed start? Where did that seed of thought around I love travel begin?
Yeah. That's another thing. Like, I never really put two and two together so much during the time until throughout my journey. Or maybe I identified it and I never wanted to acknowledge the truth of why I traveled. Um, in life, we're either a fight or flight.
Yep.
And I'm not a fighter. I'm a very strong person. I'll fight for, certain things, but in general, I avoid things. And I, like you're a runner. I'm a runner mentally. I'm not a physical runner.
Right. How did you know?
How
did you know I was a runner?
What is that back there?
Yeah. Doesn't mean anything to anybody listening on the podcast. But...
Yeah, with the shrine of medals behind you for your races. I don't have those, but I'm a mental runner. I physically need to get up and move my body elsewhere out of situations.
Right.
And I was feeling that way after university. I was never somebody who knew exactly what my path in life was going to be. I was very good at many things. I tried many things. I did my very best at every stage that I was supposed to, but I was never someone like, oh, I knew I wanted to be a dentist or a nurse or a doctor, or anything like that. And so I struggled for the first couple of years of university trying to figure out like what to focus on. And I was transitioning from, I guess, very similar. You're making me think of like a lot of correlations I never really thought about, but similar to like my childhood when we changed communities, I also changed universities midway through. So we have 4 years here. So my first 2 years I spent down in the South, and then I moved back to the Midwest, the region that I'm originally from. I moved to Chicago and I found a hospitality and tourism school, and I went there, and upon graduating, I was like, I am going to travel because I wanted to be able to I didn't know what I wanted to do at 22. I didn't know who I was, what kind of life I wanted to have. I mean, no one should really. You're 22. You've been institutionalized your whole life.
Of course, yeah.
I was very unhappy with the lack of career options in the travel and hospitality industry, the possibilities. I could have definitely taken any job, but I've always been someone who stayed true to myself and my own path in life. And the corporate route didn't feel right to me, despite what anyone expected or society said. So I was also struggling during that time. That's my political answer. That's the right, and it is right.
Yep.
But the more depth to it is that I was struggling mentally. My anxiety was turning into bouts of depression,
Right.
and I was not always in the brightest spot. And I was very overwhelmed with what I now needed to do in life. And because there's a lot of expectations for us, and in general, after graduating from university. And I said, you know what? I need to get away. I'm not in a right mind frame. I need something that's going to heal my soul. And I hadn't traveled much before that, especially solo. I never traveled solo, but I didn't care.
Right.
I'm not, as an only child, I've never been afraid to be alone. I've been alone my whole life. So that didn't scare me. And the unknown didn't scare me either. So I said, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how long I'm going for. I don't know what I'm going to get out of this, but I just need to go away for a bit and figure life out and figure my mind out. And I only thought I was going to travel for a couple months, and I ended up traveling on and off for over 10 years. And I fell in love with travel. I fell in love with how it was helping me, how it was challenging me, and how I was learning more about myself. And even though it took me a long time to figure out my career path, I was figuring out myself first.
Yep.
And I think that's a key element before you figure out what impact you want to make as a career for the rest of your life. So I didn't understand my journey yet, but I did understand that I was turning to travel as a coping mechanism to run away, but yet it was also a healthy one
Yeah.
because I was learning so much from it. Did that make sense?
It does, yeah, absolutely. And figuring yourself out is such an important part. And sadly, it takes things to happen, crisis or trauma or something, to sort of make us stop and reflect on that thought, doesn't it? And I like that you took time to do it, running away, but actually learning so much through that journey of what you did. And you've excessively traveled now, or not excessively, because you can never excessively travel, but you've traveled a lot and you've been to a lot of places. How was that
Yeah.
in your sort of solo world of doing that? Because obviously that's an adventure, but it's also
Yeah,
quite
it's not
scary.
easy.
No,
It's not for everybody.
no, no.
It's essentially it's a persona that I step into. And the reason I
Okay.
say that is because every time when I return home, it's a different lifestyle. We are accustomed to our home life, how we
Yeah, yeah.
are at home. And I look back and I look at that person, I say, I can't believe I just traveled solo throughout. I tend to go to, I've been to over 84 countries and I tend to go to developing or underdeveloped because I feel more enriched in
Yes,
being in those type of countries
sure.
versus well established or big cities. And I I look at that girl and I'm like, I don't know who she is. But then every time that I book that ticket and I step on that plane, I step right back in the role and it's second nature to me. And I think a lot of travelers have that. We're different people, humans, and from when we're at home to when we are traveling. And that's something that travel is why travel is so powerful, is that being in different environments, being the underdog in different environments,
Yeah,
I'm now in someone else's not only home, but culture, language, lifestyle. And I'm a sponge. I'm learning about it. And despite, yes, my anxiety was tested, I've been someone I've chosen not to take medication for anxiety
okay.
for my own choice. And so I struggle with anxiety a lot. And travel has put that to the test. But something about me, which is very strange, is I like to test myself to see how strong I am.
Yep.
And I do that in many areas of my life, especially when it comes to my anxiety. So I like to see if I am feeling this way, how can I manage to heal or cope? So I learned different coping mechanisms. Traveling, being by bodies of water is really calming to me. I am an Aquarius, but um, I always am drawn towards water. And the same thing living. When I choose places to live, even in my home state, I choose next to bodies of water. Even if it's just a pond, I need that water. It's very calming to
Sure,
me.
yeah. Yeah.
So travel has opened doors to different ways to cope with my mental health, and meeting different people and hearing their stories of why people were traveling is
Mm.
what sparked me to start my travel coach network, because everyone, just like what you're doing with this podcast, everyone has a story, and I wanted to be able to connect people with their story and their why for their traveling in different ways. So it's because travel really is something we all turn to heal in so many for different reasons, whether we're maybe dealing with a loss of a loved one or a horrible breakup, or we just need to find self-fulfillment in some way and we go on a solo trip. We don't always acknowledge that's the underlying reason or the purpose for this, but it's there. And that's one thing that why travel is so it's that common connector for a lot of people. You can be in two different complete worlds or industries, but like when you talk about travel, you can talk about travel forever, right? So it's just such a been a healing factor for my life. So first it was my source for running away, but it has been my greatest professor of for my whole life.
Incredible, yeah. And what a wonderful sort of way that you put that as well, and around the way you've built your business to do this thing of helping others to tell and experience their stories through it too. So that brings a big question there, because you haven't been able to do this for a year, or you've been limited in what you can do for the past year. So how has that been for you? How have you found that?
Yeah. Um, it's been fine, actually.
Okay.
I had spent so much time traveling and hopping around the globe as just a solo budget backpacker
Yep.
that it can get exhausting. And when I started my business is about over almost 3 years ago, it takes a different set of attention and things that you look for, especially if you're traveling. So I had in the beginning stages, I was traveling while starting my business. And I quickly learned that that was not easy. So
Yeah.
for my own mental well-being, I needed to stay in one place so I
Okay.
can focus.
Yeah.
Just like my journeys in life, my next chapter was with my business. And I was so fortunate to be able to incorporate what I had experienced and gone through and learned and loved for the last decade into my new chapter in my life and my businesses. So although I hadn't been able to travel, I had plans, some travel plans and everything set up, but my businesses have kept me so busy over the year, and it still involves around travel. So
Yeah.
I that element's not gone. So it's just different ways that I've been able to experience or talk about or have to do with travel instead of just the physical travel. So I've been very lucky that I've been fine, and I've been busy during this despite being in the travel industry with my businesses. That has kept me going every day. It's really just flown by this past year.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good to hear, though. I'm really
Yeah.
encouraged to hear that as well. And in terms of your sort of anxiety levels over the last year, what have they looked like for you? Manageable? You've struggled?
Yeah. Well, being an entrepreneur is very stressful, as you know.
Yeah,
Oh, and
definitely.
then I run 2 businesses every single day on my
Wow.
own.
Yeah.
So, and it's a learning lesson. I was learning everything from scratch, building 2 brand new niches from scratch, paving paths in the industry,
Yeah.
on my own. So it has not been easy. So my anxiety now stems from that. But just like I had to learn to cope with my anxiety at every stage in my life, every part, whatever my journey entailed at that time, same thing with being with entrepreneurship. It's a whole new set of challenges on how to cope and manage with your stress and anxiety and bouts of depression and what that looks like for yourself. So
Yeah.
learning to be kinder to myself, learning to be more rewarding to myself for all my hard work, learning to that's okay to take off days, learning that it's okay to disconnect and take it easy some days, and finding ways to incorporate what really matters to you. So little things like spending time with my mom more, or being outside with my dog, or spending time with my boyfriend, because my mind is always on work. I need to do this. I
Yes.
need to send this email. I have to do this. I mean, you fully understand,
Yeah.
but that's not healthy. So finding that balance for yourself. And balance is such like an overused word when it says find your balance, but it really is finding your balance for every single day, because
Yeah.
every day's balance is different. So that's why I mentioned to you, like I'm just taking day by day, because
Brilliant.
there's unexpected. You might wake up and feel, I can't predict what days I'm more anxious. I can't predict how I'm physiologically going to be impacted in the morning and how that's going to impact the rest of my day.
Yeah.
So learning how to manage that. So knowing it's okay to sometimes reschedule calls, or to clear out your calendar and choose days that you're not going to schedule anything. So it's all just a learning lesson, but it's a new part of my
Yeah.
journey.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. You've got such awareness around the sort of the impact mentally, and what I love, Sahara, is your openness and your genuine. You know, you're authentic, you're genuine, and that's what I'm trying to help people to do, and I want people to be that way, because it's the only way we can really get to know who you really are. And
Yeah.
you talk about that every day, and just for everybody listening, when we came on earlier before this was recorded, I just said, oh, I've had a crappy day, and I really had, and I've had a lot of things on today for whichever day it is we're recording this. But I knew that this was going to be good, and I knew this was going to be something I was going to enjoy. And you know what, it absolutely is, because I get to sit down and just not worry about that for the minute, and I can, I've got to go back to do some other things after this, but now I'm just listening to you talking about your journey, and I really love that. And I think it's just an amazing, for what you've done and what you've achieved in your life. Lots of people, I'm sure, would be quite envious of the thought of traveling for 10 years and learning more about the world and visiting places. I know definitely I would love to do more of that at some point in my life. We're at the end, but I'm going to let you say the final word, Sahara, because you've got a lifetime of wisdom with you. So anything you'd want to say at the end?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And secondly is just learn to be kinder to yourself because you really deserve it. And we can't control everything that happens in our life. We can't control everything that happens through our mind. But if you can be more self-aware and you can find what works for you and what helps you, and just be more understanding, and just like what you're doing, Matt, with letting people share their stories and more normalizing everything around mental health and
Yeah.
our experiences, it really is going to help. And you don't know what, I hope that this helps somebody, and I'm sure it's going to. So just sharing your story and being more authentic, I think will bring back that human connection, even though we've been so distant from each other for the past year, as society, as families, in so many different ways. But we can add that human element back to our lives if we can just share with each other what we're going through, and be there and listen to one another, even if it has to be just over Zoom, because we
Yeah.
are all in this together, and we're all human beings living a life that we're doing our very best to make the best of it. And that's all that you can really do for yourself.
Yep. We're all human beings. That's the most important thing.
Hmm.
Human connections, we crave, we need those. And this has been a wonderful reconnection of, I know we haven't really spoken to each other for a little while, but it's lovely just to catch up and to see you and to see you looking so well. And oh, I just wish you all the very best with everything you're doing. I genuinely just send you loads of energy and positive thoughts towards all of those
Thank you.
amazing things that you're working on, and for both of your companies. I only have one, so it's not too much. At least it's only one headache. For anybody that is listening, if you are struggling, if you do need additional help or support, please know there is always somebody out there who will be there to talk to. So please know you're not alone. That's the most important message I think any of us can send. If you want to talk to me about any of these issues or challenges you might be experiencing, get in touch. I'm sure Sahara, if she had any questions about how do you travel for 10 years in a backpack or using a backpack, would be more than happy to help, or follow her travel coach network. I'll share the links to everything you do as well, Sahara. But thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's lovely to see you. Stay safe and well.
Thank you.
Cheers.